Welcome to All Things ADAS. I'm your host, Jerry Miller. I've got some exciting folks with me here today. I've got Spike, and I've got Brad and Lynn, and I'm going to just go ahead and have Lynn, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then after that, we'll have Brad, and tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Yeah, hi, my name's Lynn. I'm the body collision lead for Stellantis for North America, and do a lot of work with assessments, vehicle assessments, as well as procedures development, and also work with the authoring team.
Excellent, excellent. And how long have you been with Stellantis?
I've been with Stellantis for 5 years.
Okay, okay. Brad?
Yep, Brad. I am on the advanced serviceability side with a focus on diagnostics. So working with the engineering teams early in the design phase to ensure that our dealer diagnostic tools work well with our cars.
Okay. And Spike?
James Rodas. I'm with OEM Calibration in Woodhouse Auto Family, and got the pleasure of meeting Lynn many years ago on some design things that we had questions on. And, now that I've transferred a lot more over to the ADAS side, there's a lot of questions surrounding ADAS and, how it affects things and how it doesn't. And thought it'd be pretty cool to bring these two guys on and kind of tie a bow around it as far as Stellantis is concerned.
And Spike, how long have you been in the business?
38 years.
Okay. And Brad, how about yourself?
I've been with Stellantis for 11 years.
Okay. And I'm the old one here. I was actually in the car business for 44 years before I retired. So I'm down in Florida and retired down here. And Spike, you're in the Omaha area. Brad, Lynn, you're both in the Detroit area then, right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I probably got 1,000 questions that I'd love to ask, and so we'll go ahead and get started here. Maybe some easy ones here, but probably kind of a dumb question, maybe. But Brad and Lynn, so you're engineers, but when a car comes out or they develop a car, are these systems all the same from one model to the next as far as the ADAS side of it?
For the most part, they tend to kind of go in generations almost, right? So vehicles that are within a few model years are probably going to be very similar, but then when those systems evolve and grow smarter, right, we try to bring those new features, those new advancements onto our cars. It really just depends on where that development cycle of that vehicle lands with what the supplier for those systems is offering at the time. So, if we have a car that's released in the same model year, chances are they're probably going to be a very similar system, but one that's released 2 years later may have some advancements. It may be the same supplier and similar looking hardware, but some of the software behind the scenes may be a little more advanced and offer a little more features. But we're starting to commonize more and more in terms of the suppliers we're using and the layouts that we're using.
So, again, a couple questions here. When I think of engineers, from being in my end of the business, I got a chance to brush shoulders with engineers, but usually that always happened when there was a problem, a unique type problem, and you try to work through the problem and you go through the normal steps, and eventually one of you gods gets a hold of us because now we need somebody that really knows what in the world they're doing that's going to try to get this problem fixed. So from the engineering side of it, do you two design the systems that are going to go on these cars, or does somebody else in engineering do the design work and then you guys work with what they designed? Or where do you guys fall into place with the life of a system in a vehicle?
Yeah, so we're not on the engineering side. We're on the after sales side within Stellantis under the Mopar umbrella. But both of us are part of the advanced serviceability team, and the whole purpose of our team is to work with engineering with that service mindset during the development phase. So engineers will design the architecture and the overall design of that system, and then have us in their ear while they're doing that saying, hey, would that work in a dealership? Is that something our technicians could use? Or what if you did it in this way so that it's more useful for our technicians? And that's kind of, for me, I do that on the diagnostic side, and Lynn, you do that on the collision body side, correct?
Yeah, correct. And so same kind of thing. So is engineers, production engineers are actually working to develop new car designs and future vehicles, we're in those meetings with them. And so as that vehicle is actually in CAD and being produced, we're looking at all of the different avenues that would fall into the realm of repair. So if it's a structural component, how can we service it? So very similar, just two completely different silos. He's on the data side and I'm on the collision side. But yeah, we basically follow the same program.
Okay.
So there is a lot of thought put into repairability when it's made to sell.
Yeah. There is thought put into it, and that comes directly from our input typically. Because if we weren't in those meetings, you would have parts that were designed to crash into other parts couldn't be removed without removing 30 other things. And I mean, those conditions still exist on our vehicles today because sometimes there's just no way around it. But we're always there in those design meetings saying, hey, that's not going to work for us. And, we go through a process of building business cases and trying to influence that design. And sometimes the other side of it wins out with a different business case. So we see both sides of it, and we're really that kind of avenue from the shop into those design meetings and influencing it as much as we can.
How heated do some of those meetings get?
I don't know if they become heated. I mean, there's different points of view, right? So a production engineer is looking at how do you produce this vehicle on an assembly line? We're looking at it from the perspective of how are we going to repair that vehicle afterwards? The nice thing about it is that we work with a team of individuals that we get to know. Right. So we get to know the body and white engineers. They know what my requirements are for, let's say, welding a frame rail. Is the tensile strength that I can do a stitch weld? What is one that I can't do a stitch weld? So they kind of have that information, and that's kind of throughout. It can be something like maybe it's accessing a washer bottle or something like that, or to change a pump. Those kinds of things. So they work with us and understand that, you can build up a lot of time for a repair if something's not in the position where it's easy to get to. And so we work through those issues and it's back and forth, but we typically come up with a solution.
Well, what's a normal day for both of you look like? I mean, I know a lot of people out, in the industry. We know there's engineers behind everything that takes place, and I think a lot of people are just kind of curious. Well, what do those guys do every day? What's a normal day for you guys look like?
A normal day for me, and again, I don't know if there's such a thing as a normal day, but I can kind of give you an idea as far as what I do on a weekly basis. Right? So I'll be in meetings throughout the week, and those meetings are on future vehicle design, and they can be about structural, or maybe it's a future design on a particular material. And so we have material science people in there. We have body and white engineers, and we're talking about a structure and how it's going to be developed. And then we're like, well, maybe that's not going to work real well for service because of this reason, that kind of thing. And then the other side of what I do on a daily basis is at this location where I'm at right now in Rochester Hills, which is just north of Detroit. I come to work every day, and we're looking at vehicles that are getting ready to launch, and we're developing repair procedures hands-on. So we take them apart, we cut them apart, we identify where those areas need to be sectioned and how it's going to be replaced, and how those service parts need to be set up as well. So a lot of time doing that kind of thing. The other part of my job is inquiries. So I relate to a lot of shops, take a lot of calls from shops, different repair issues that they run into. There's no two hits that are alike, right? And so I've been in this business for many, many years. And so I don't think I've ever seen two exact hits in a collision repair that are the same. And so they run into things that, that are unanticipated when it comes to repair. And we walk them through those. And if there's a question, we work with a body and white engineer or a material science person.
Yeah, Lynn's very good at being in the back with his grinder, grinding on a frame rail, making all the software engineers mad because they're trying to concentrate and write
I'm
code.
the noisiest one here.
I know you've helped me and some of our customers on the, our dealership sells a lot of parts, so we get a lot of questions. And I know you've helped me and some mutual customers out of some jams. So for that, I appreciate what you guys do. So
We
Well,
enjoy it.
do you guys get to see live vehicles that have been in accidents, or Lynn or Brad, do you take them out in the parking lot and run into a tree or something, and then see what you got to deal with, or do you get
No.
out in the field into some of the body shops to actually see the hits and put your hands on them and talk to the guys? How does that work for you?
Yeah, a lot of times they'll send photos of a hit, right? And they obviously in a different part of the country, and they'll send photos, and we'll I'll call them up. We'll kind of walk through it that way sometimes. But oftentimes I'll get a car that's actually been crash tested here, and they bring it to this facility, and we'll take a look at it. But typically, we're looking at, how can I make that repair if it's hit here, here, or here, and we'll cut it apart, and we'll find the places, and we get down to every single spot weld, and so we identify that, and our method of authoring now calls all that information out.
So you have a regular shop, just like any body shop would have then?
Oh yeah. I've got MIG welders, I've got resistance welders, I've got SPR equipment, all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Okay. Now I got one of those. I always have to have a question that everybody's going to kind of wonder about. So here's my question. So being out here, I started life off, went to tech school, and I started off as a mechanical technician. So I know how to get my fingers dirty. But my dad was an engineer for the Bell Telephone, and my son's an engineer for mechanical engineer. But so I always got to ask these good questions. So when I'm ever working on anything, I see something, and I may not necessarily be happy with how it was designed or how I think it should have been designed. So out here in the field, I'm going, who in the world had the loose screw that made it like this? and then or you end up with somebody that really helped you get it figured out. So then you go, well, there's a really smart engineer, and I have a lot of respect for him. So I'm just kind of curious, which one are you two?
We're the ones that figure out the solution around the engineering. And we try to prevent that engineering as much as possible.
Okay. So what would you say is the biggest challenge you guys run into as far as you now have a product and it's out there and life happens? What challenges do you guys have as far as being able to know what is really taking place, or how fast does things get to you, and how fast can you react and make changes?
I'd say from a collision standpoint, in real time. I mean, as they're being developed. So we're in those meetings. So if they're coming up with press hardened steel that's used in a particular area, how can I take that apart without having to have sacrificial panels or try to keep my repair? I'm always thinking, how can I keep that repair as least invasive as possible? And so, quite honestly, the body and white engineers understand that pretty well. And they really work with us, and they get the service side. So it's not like we're ignored by any means, right? On the service side, they really get that. And so we have our functional outcomes that are important, and they respect that, and we also respect their production outcomes as well.
And
So,
then from
Lynn,
the
I
field
don't know
side-
if you remember this, but there was, I don't remember if it was a recall or what, but the old plastic bumper stays, the bumper snaps into it. We were having an issue. I want to say it was like a fancy Durango or something. It just wouldn't stay. Every time, you'd hit a couple bumps and it'd pop out. Customer was irate. We ordered some from parts, didn't go well. Same result, right? Customer's like, I'm not taking it. I get to Lynn and sent him what we had, and I think within a couple days, you sent me back a couple more to try. Those didn't work. You sent a couple more, 2 or 3 times back and forth, and I was just impressed because each time you guys made a little tweak to it. I mean, we're talking a number of days, and we had them back in our hand again to try them. And I think after, maybe a couple times back and forth, it's like, yep, these are perfect. I don't know if you remember that, but that was not too far after when you started. And I'm like, okay, here's a go-getter. He's getting the problem solved. So
Yeah.
I can attest to how quick they can turn things around.
Yeah,
Well,
I think that's the
that's
reward of the
excellent.
job, though. That's what we strive to do.
So when obviously you got one on the diagnostic side and one on the, I'll call it more of the physical side. how important really is it? I mean, out here in the field, we hear a lot of things, but in your opinions, how important is it for us to be using OEM equipment when we're dealing with recalibration on the ADAS systems?
I mean, I think from our standpoint, it's really important, right? Because we've validated those parts, those tools, right? We know they meet our engineering specifications, they fall within our design limits and are able to, especially on the calibration tool side, calibrate the sensors and the radars within the design parameters. I'm not saying the third-party tools couldn't do that. We just can't guarantee that, right? We haven't validated them ourselves, right? The tools that we sell, we know because we've set them up in our shop and we've done them on our vehicles in different test scenarios, different cases, moving things here, setting it up a little wrong, making sure it fails, right? We've tested all of that here in our shops.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Spike, I know the business that you're in the calibration side of it. To my knowledge, everything that you use is the OEM equipment, correct?
100%. Nothing we use is from a third-party supplier at all. Everything is sourced straight through the OEM, a dealership or what have you.
Okay. Anything you want to ask on that at all from our end of the world? Anybody?
Me?
I don't
Put
care.
them on the spot.
We might have a short edit here.
Well, that's easy enough.
Yeah, I mean, again, it scares me, all the aftermarket stuff out there, just for the reason that you guys said, right? No, I don't think anybody's really validating or caring as much as the OEMs do about making sure that it's 100%. And to me, that's a little scary, because to me, these are safety systems. I mean, it's meant to protect people's lives. And if you've ever had your automatic emergency braking going on because maybe you weren't paying attention, that's when that light bulb goes off, right? You have the aha moment and you're like, man, I sure am glad that's there, because, front end collisions, you guys know, they're not a couple $1,000s anymore like they used to be. There's so many parts behind there, and that's all made with intent, we can't protect the people inside, unless it's designed the way that you guys design it, which thankfully you do, because people don't get hurt like they used to, at least.
Yeah, and I think,
So-
OE parts, same kind of thing, right? When you're talking about equipment, but also the parts. So you look at something like a forward-facing camera, and the forward-facing camera engineer and the windshield engineer, they work hand in hand. So the wedge of the glass is the same, and so if you have an aftermarket glass, it may work, it may not work well. But we know that we've identified how that should work with that forward-facing camera with OE glass.
That's interesting. Any thoughts on, let's say I'm a normal customer, which obviously I'm not normal, but let's just say that I'm a customer and I go to a body shop and I don't know any better. And that particular body shop may or may not use OEM parts. And I certainly would never know as a customer if they used OEM equipment on a calibration, or what they even did, or even they've calibrated it. How am I, as a normal customer, what should I do? Any advice on what I ought to do, what I should be looking out for, or questions I should ask? What do I do as a customer? How do I protect myself from making sure I get a good repair?
If I were a customer and owner of a vehicle, I would ask the shop. I would ask the shop owner or the manager of that particular shop. Do you use OE procedures? Do you use OE parts? And so, I think that there's enough information out there to the layperson that many people do understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that, when their car is involved in an accident, I think that's a fair question to ask that owner or manager.
And
Okay.
don't accept no from the insurance company, because they're probably going to say no first, right? You need a shop that's going to be willing to fight for that as well. And, that's part of going into selecting a good shop, which is not always the easiest, but, make sure they use the OE parts, and then ask them, if the insurance denies it, will you help me get them to approve it? Because a lot of times the insurance companies don't want to use OE parts because they're maybe a little more expensive. Although we're trying to fix that from a Mopar perspective as well. We're trying to price our parts more competitively now.
And
Quite
maybe
frankly, I don't think that's too fair, honestly, because from what I've seen over the years, the OEM part is a superior part. I've never felt like it should have to be priced the same as a cheap part. But there's probably a happy medium in there somewhere.
Yes,
I'm sorry to
exactly.
interrupt you there, Spike.
No, no, all good. And I was going to say, and also ask if they're, certified. A lot of these manufacturers have certification programs for body shops, and the reason that they have that is they can kind of watch and make sure that the shops are doing things the way that they're supposed to be doing things, pulling procedures and so forth.
And we have a certification program, right, Lynn?
We do. We have our certified network. So we have around 2,000 shops that are part of that. I get a lot of inquiries from different things. When it comes to ADAS, I think probably one of the most asked questions oftentimes are blind spot monitors if they're refinishing a fascia. And, they'll say, hey, what is that area? We have documentation that we provide, but typically, I'll respond and or call them up either way. And we'll kind of chat. Typically, we don't want any filler, any kind of repair material, 25 centimeters in front of that blind spot monitor, and we want them to do a pre-measurement because sometimes covers get painted more than once. So what's that millage of paint on there before they even start to make that repair? So a lot of times they'll get pushback from insurance companies, and they'll want it repaired in front of that area, and so they'll reach out and ask what our position is on that.
Yeah. And if you
Do
are
you
a shop
guys have
being added to our certified network, right? One of the biggest benefits from a shop standpoint is the access to those inquiries,
Yeah.
right? They're a direct line to Lynn essentially. And then if he can answer the question, great. Especially if it's on the collision side, if it's a diagnostic question, he's constantly sending me emails, asking me questions. And if I don't know the answer, we reach out to engineering. And you will typically get a response within a week or two, depending on the complexity of the question. If it's really off the wall and someone's got to dig deep, it might take a little bit longer for us to find the right person to talk to that even knows how to answer it. But having that access to the inquiry kind of goes back to one of your earlier questions is how do you get a hold of us? How do you have that into the OE? That's one of those avenues that gets very fast responses.
How, I'm backing up a little bit here, but I guess it's making me kind of curious now. How many of you guys are out there in Stellantis? I mean, are you two it? Or how many engineers are involved in the ADAS? ADAS, I'm sorry.
I mean, on the engineering side, there's probably 40 or 50-ish. I don't know. Directly on the engineering side, and then on the service side, our advanced serviceability team is 12 people, I think? 12 people in various, what we call BICEPs, so body, interior, chassis, electrical, powertrain, right? We all have our little niche. His is collision, mine's diagnostic. We've got guys that follow engines, right? So there's 12 of us on the advanced serviceability team. It depends on how far you want to go. We've got a whole team of authors that are writing our service information. We've got, a whole development team of software developers that, create our diagnostic tools. There's probably about 50 of those plus validation, right? So, it is a large team of people to bring the after sales information from engineering, transform it into something that a technician can utilize and then publish it. It's a huge organization, and it's a big part of Mopar in general.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. I just think some of these questions are ones that out here in the marketplace are always kind of wondering, what goes on behind that hidden wall that we don't know about. So, what are some of the What are the biggest challenges that you guys run into? If you could change something, what would you change? Or what are the challenges that you really bang your head against the wall on?
That's a good one.
Like working with a guy like Spike, maybe? I don't know.
Sometimes, honestly, it's just finding the right person. I've kind of said it for a long time. Within a company that's as big as Stellantis is, especially now that we've merged with Peugeot and Fiat, and we're a global organization in France and in Italy and in North America, it's finding the right person. There is if you have a question, there is probably somebody in the organization that can answer it off the top of their head, right? But finding that person is the challenge a lot of times.
Yeah. Do you have to speak French then when you call over there? Or?
Luckily, no.
No,
They're very
pretty
good about
good.
speaking English.
Yeah.
Now, how often do you get to go over there?
None yet.
Oh,
Hopefully
okay.
soon.
Well,
We meet a couple times a week, though.
Yep.
okay.
Yeah, we're constantly talking to him,
Yep.
constantly in meetings.
It's interesting. I was going to ask you a question there, Spike, but you had a water bottle in your mouth. But
Sorry.
no, we'll edit that out. I'm going to give myself a breath of fresh air here. This is one I think that I know the answer to, but I'll let you guys answer it. How do you know once a vehicle's been repaired and assuming that it's repaired properly, at least it looks good, and you assume that it had a calibration, or at least you've told it's been done, how would you know that it actually is done to the specification that it should? Now, I realize that assuming that it's a certified shop, you have to have a level of trust at some point. But now you're driving down the road. How do you feel comfortable that it's right? For example, Lynn or Brad, or even Spike, if you had to have your vehicle fixed somewhere, what would you, besides asking questions, you go to drive that car, what are you looking for? What are you going to be looking to see what it does or doesn't do?
Well, if you
Right.
take a look at the, I was just going to say, I'll go back to the example I used on the blind spot monitor. So, for instance, when we have a shop reach out and they're going to repair, refinish a rear fascia, let's say, one of the things that are included in the document that I share with them, and I also reinforce when I talk to them or when I email them back, is to drive the vehicle afterwards to confirm that that blind spot monitor is working correctly. And so depending on the impact and the collision repair itself and how invasive and how great that damage was, make sure that all those systems work by simply driving it and confirming that the systems work properly.
Yeah, I mean, we have on the software side, we have DTCs and warning messages, right? That'll pop up or set when there's an issue, but they're not going to do that until you try to utilize the system. So they can't evaluate whether or not the system's functioning until it's exercised on the road in its operating environment that it's supposed to be operating in. Now, we have some calibration DTCs that exist, but a lot of times all those are doing are just making sure that a calibration has been completed. We can't tell whether or not it's been completed properly until we try to utilize the system.
And that's, I was going to bring that up just a little bit. So, we hear all the time out in the field that, well, there's no DTC. And I think a lot of people in the industry are struggling with, if there's not a DTC, everything's okay. And that's not always the case, at least that we see. Sometimes it's just not out of parameter enough to cause it to throw that warning light or whatever, or even warning, well, there's no warning light on the dash. Well, yeah, that's maybe 10% of things that it's going to come up for. It's got to be really out of spec for that to happen. And as far as us validating that something is done right, I like the lane departure. That's a great one. It's very visual. If you're not in the center of the lane, if you're too far to the left, okay, there's something probably wrong there. You should be pretty centered inside that lane. And it's not, generally speaking, a quick 2-mile drive. You're should be driving for, 10, 15, 20 minutes to validate and make sure, okay, everything is going good.
Which makes
sure.
good sense. So, curious, you guys probably don't have time, maybe you do have time, but do you keep track of what the other manufacturers are doing as far as the ADAS systems and what you guys do?
Yeah. So, I mean, our engineering teams are benchmarking. We're constantly doing benchmarking. I'm sure all of the OEs benchmark other OEs just to make sure we're not doing something completely off base. That's a terrible idea. From an after sales perspective, we do the same. We benchmark tools all the time to make sure, hey, maybe they have a better tool. Let's see if it's easier to set up, easier to use. Like, we're constantly trying to make sure, we're on the forefront of technology. And sometimes another OE might have something that's better than what we're currently offering. And if that's the case, we want to evaluate it and see if it's something we can start utilizing. It's really in the name of convenience for our technicians and our customers. A lot of times our customers are the technicians, but ultimately our end customers as well. The faster, more efficient we can do a repair, the less time it's at a dealer, the less inconvenience they are. So, we're constantly evaluating, keeping an eye on it, making sure we're not getting too far behind. So yeah, I mean, we do benchmarking for sure, and we keep an eye on it.
Do you ever see, or do you think it'll ever move towards where a lot of things will be more uniform between manufacturers at all, between vehicle lines?
Not unless one supplier comes in and takes over all of the systems, right?
Okay.
Each OE is going to have potentially utilize a different supplier for the system. But even an OE that shares a supplier with another OE, we have our own set of requirements of how we expect it to operate within the vehicle environment and as it's driving down the road. That software for each OE is definitely unique in terms of how it operates on the vehicle. So it may be similar in terms of like a broad process for how it's calibrated, set up a fixture in front of the car. It's using a very similar target, right? But what becomes OE specific might be the height and distance that it is away from the car. One OE might use center line of the vehicle to line up the target, whereas we typically use thrust angle, right? But those two OEs may use the same supplier. It's just how we told the supplier to implement the system. And that's where you're always going to get those differences.
Sure. And it'd be like, well, I know just from being in the dealership world, you obviously a lot smaller than your world. You get different departments together, and sometimes it's pretty tough to come to a conclusion on what direction you want to go, let alone trying to expect, multiple, manufacturers to get together and try to decide any of that. I'm old enough to remember being in school when, don't worry too much about the standard system because metric is going to take over everything. And here we're still sitting here with still standard and metric and trying to figure out which tool to use. It's like, I don't think that's ever going to get fixed. It's just some things just don't seem to ever go past a certain point. It all sounds good, but in reality, it doesn't always seem to happen. So what kind of questions, you guys probably didn't come prepared for questions for us, but any questions that you might have for us?
Oh, I guess, I guess one of the questions I would have is, what are you seeing from the field? And I know that you have a pretty good view of the part of the country that you're in, and you've got a pretty good size area that you cover. And so, what are some of the things that you see on a daily basis with regard to collision or shops, or some of the struggles or some of the issues that you see? Oftentimes I get those in an inquiry, and I strive to try to get back to that shop. My goal is by the end of the day. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. So I try to get a turnaround within 24 hours. And so, but certainly try to help the shops as problems arise or questions that they have. So curious to see what you see.
Well, I know from my perspective, again, we sell a lot of parts, so we field a lot of questions about procedures. And I would say the one thing that probably confuses people the most with Stellantis is there's not a ton of procedures that say, here's every weld on this roof, here's how many you need. You have to go into the welding section, and it kind of lays it out inside of there. So I would say that's probably the one that confuses people the most with Stellantis. Now me, I've been Dodge for 18 years. We mainly fixed Ford and Dodge. So I know those procedures, how to dig in pretty quick. So to me, that's like the back of my hand. But I would say that still confuses a lot of people on, well, I can't find a roof procedure. Well, yeah, you got to go into welding, and it kind of line it up with what you're doing, and it is spelled out in there pretty nice. It's just a matter of knowing how to access that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, going forward, we're doing procedure development and authoring that's specific to. So if it's a Grand Cherokee, I'll use that for an example, you're putting a frame tip on, or the new Charger that's out there, all of that information is specific for that vehicle. And we show every weld, we show every, exactly where to cut it, the backer that's identified, the width of it, how it should be put in there, and so on and so forth. So that's the direction we're moving, and you can see that now in a lot of our procedures. So to your point, though, we do have areas, weld and weld bonding, or an area on corrosion protection that lays out kind of a general format for how the shop should actually approach those areas.
Maybe for me,
Oh, go ahead.
on the calibration side, are you guys seeing things getting easier in terms of the way calibrations are performed, how hard they are to set the tools up, or if you're doing a drive alignment, the requirements kind of around a drive alignment? Are you seeing those becoming less restrictive than maybe they are in the past? Because I know in the past some of ours were very complex and hard to do, and we've worked hard to try to open those windows to make them easier in a much larger kind of environment. I'm just curious if you're seeing that across the board.
Yeah, no, I think if you're a professional and you're doing things the right way, I don't think calibrations are that difficult. You have a process, you have the right tools, follow the process, do it, use the correct tool, and we don't see a ton of stuff. I think as sensor degradation happens, which, at some point, that a sensor's going to go bad, right? It's an electronic piece, just like TVs go out, computers go out. People understanding that, hey, sometimes that part just goes out. Well, it was fine when it came in. Yeah, until we had to wake it up, right? We had to wake it up and it said, no, I'm still taking a nap. So you might need a new sensor. I think little things like that are popping up, but all in all, I think if you guys give really good directions, use the right tool, use the right directions, you get a good outcome, in my opinion.
Would you prefer a drive alignment or an in-bay static alignment with a tool and a fixture?
Me personally, I feel more comfortable that a fixture is probably more accurate. And I don't know if that's true. In my head, I feel that's probably more true. And the great side of that is rain doesn't affect it, snow doesn't affect it. As you guys know, we're in Nebraska. We get all those things. You get out to western Nebraska and it snows, you might not be calibrating a car for 3-4 days. I mean, that's just real. The lines out there aren't always great on the interstate or on highways. So, some manufacturers have dual options for everything. But again, I'm always going to go towards the static side of it. Just being, I personally trust that a little more.
Yeah. And the dual option is the direction we're heading. We're trying to make sure that our techs have that flexibility because, like you said, if it's raining or snowing, you can't take it out and drive it. And what are we supposed to do? Wait a week for the weather to get nice and explain that to the customer? How do you do that, right? So we're trying to make sure we offer that dual option, in-bay or drive alignment, as one of our priorities moving forward.
And now, I have a question on that part. Is the procedure obviously is different if you're doing static versus dynamic. Now, equipment-wise, that'll be completely different too, won't it?
Yeah. I mean, the drive alignment uses objects on the side of the road. It uses the lines. It uses signs as you pass by. It uses other cars within traffic around you.
Yeah.
And you were saying, you feel like you get a better result in bay. I think both of them get you into the same window, which is that normal operating window. These systems, as they're driving down the road, are constantly kind of mini calibrating themselves, readjusting their focus, just because parts wear out, as you said, tolerances get looser, things wiggle, right? So they're constantly kind of adjusting for things like that as you're driving. And so we're able to do with our software a really good calibration driving. Again, it depends on the environment. If it's snowing, not so much. If there's super heavy traffic with cars close by and stop and go, we can't really calibrate in that environment. And so then you got to switch to an in-bay. And they're the same. That's a product of the environment. How precise are you when you're setting up those tools? There's a little bit of slack in there, but if you're way off base, you could calibrate it way off base.
Coming from the mechanical side of things, I always dealt with stacked tolerance, differences. And I can't honestly ever say that I ever even thought about that from this topic being stacked tolerances.
Yeah.
Interesting. Anything you want to add to that, Spike?
No, again, I love the space that we're in as far as calibrations and things like that. education, education for shops, also for end users, right? Just like every OEM isn't the same. You know, if you drive a Stellantis product, you know how they feel, how they function. If you go over to another brand, you're not going to have the same feeling or end result that you may not be used to. So, you know, I think shop owners and consumers should ask questions about, you know, how is the calibration performed? You know, give me some documentation. Don't just give me a bill at the end. You know, show me the money, kind of, so to speak. You know, let me see how it was done. And again, I think the way you guys set things up, I think it's easy for us to do, easy for us to follow, and easy for us to have a good end result.
Good. We like
Well,
to hear that.
I'm impressed with what I've learned and heard today. This has been a lot of fun for me to be able to share and get to visit with both Brad and Lynn and Spike. We get to talk enough, so you know you impressed me a long time ago, so you can't do it anymore. But no, this has been very enjoyable, and hopefully you know we all got something out of it besides you know happy smiles. Where do we go from here? A couple quick questions, and then unless somebody's got anything else, we'll probably sign off. But Brad, what do you drive? What's your favorite vehicle?
Right now, I'm driving a Ram 1500, brand
A
new one I
Hemi?
just got. No, not a Hemi, although we are bringing the Hemi back.
No, that's going to make people happy.
Yes, but mine has the 3-liter inline six with the twin turbo, which it's my first vehicle with that engine in it because it's a relatively new engine for us at Stellantis, probably 4 or 5 years old now, so I guess not that new, but new to me. And I've enjoyed it so far. I haven't had any issues, so I like that truck a lot, actually.
Okay, excellent. Lynn?
Well, let's see. Little bit different answer on that. So my favorite car that I have is a 65 Dodge Coronet that I'm just finishing up. It's an old school 440, 2.4s, 500 plus horse. That's my favorite ride.
It's beautiful.
Oh, I got to see pictures when you're done then.
I got to ask, what color is it?
Bright red.
Okay, fun.
Painted it yourself.
Yep, just a couple months ago.
Good
Now,
man.
you didn't use a brush, I hope. I hope
I did
you-
not use a brush.
and nor a spray can. That's not good. That's not. Well, I have a Jeep, but now since you brought a performance car, I have to say that I'm a proud father. My son, he's on his second Hellcat, but this one here now is a Hellcat. Now I'm losing the thought on it. Red Eye. Thank you. I don't know how I could forget that, but we've played with that a little bit and made a few changes to that, which has been a lot of fun for me. My background was I loved the drag race, and so I had a pro street car that I got rid of years ago, and I always complain about that because I had it for 30 years. My wife rode in it one time to the gas station and back, and that was enough for her. So I get to enjoy going for a ride in the Hellcat. But you know what's amazing to me is you take one of those older muscle cars, and you compare it to like the Hellcat. You know, you could hop in that Hellcat, and you could drive across the country. You have air conditioned seats. You've got all the comforts of the world. It's a 4,000 pound car, and yet the thing will get up and go. And it's just incredible the technology that's been put into these vehicles, and it's pretty impressive with what's gone on. So,
For sure.
Spike, you're driving you're on a scooter. What do you?
I would say probably one of the most fun ones I've had is I bought a 2-door Wrangler, and we had a lot of fun in that thing. And I'll tell you, that thing is a beast in the snow. You just couldn't stop that thing. And when you're in Nebraska and you're a guy and it snows, yep, I'll go to the store.
Yeah.
Oh, it's snowing out. No, that's fine. I'm good.
Yeah,
Let's
you're looking
go
for the
do this.
chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're looking for the chance.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Somebody's injured, call me.
Well, excellent. Go ahead.
I'd have to ask, what do you guys, if you have a crystal ball into the future for ADAS specifically, are we going to be going more LiDAR? Are we going to be sitting in the back seat with cars driving in 10 years? What's your guys' gut tell you?
I mean, it seems like it's heading that direction. I mean, I think the immediate future, and I don't know for sure. Like
Yeah.
I'm not
And we're going to
involved in
hold you
their
to it.
very early planning, but I think hands-free is going to start becoming more prevalent. It's just starting to be there with the L2 Plus, which is, hands off, eyes on. The next step after that is obviously level 3, which is hands off, eyes off, right? So that is something the industry is working towards. I know that. When we're going to do it, I'm not sure. It's rumored, but nothing definite for sure, because that's a huge step. There's a lot of questions surrounding that.
Little scary.
Liability questions, technology questions. Can we do it? Some OEs aren't using LiDAR. Some OEs are using LiDAR. I don't know how you can do it long term everywhere without LiDAR, but that's the big question in the industry. Can it be done? Because LiDAR is an expensive technology, a very expensive technology. And so I think in the next 10 years, we're going to head towards that more automated driving. But me personally, I like driving my car. I like driving. I want to have the hands on and push the gas. And if I wish we had more manual cars, I like rowing my own gears. That's my biggest complaint, is we don't make more manual cars. It's a nice feature to have if you're driving down the interstate for 8 hours, but day to day, I want to drive my car. But that's my personal opinion. But I think we're
closer.
heading in that direction.
We're getting closer to the Jetsons.
Yes, every
Well,
day.
you have to get rid of your electric windows as well. So, but I don't disagree with you. I fell in love with cars at a young age, and to me, you want to drive it. It's you got to get in the saddle and make it go. So I agree with you. So well, again, I appreciate the time that everybody gave today, and very much enjoyed this, and hopefully we'll get a chance to speak again, and we'll go from there. So with that, I think we'll say we're done. Appreciate it. Again, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you guys
Thank
for having
you.
us.
Thanks, guys.